Hi, welcome to another edition of Transparency in Government. We're here this morning with our town manager, Kevin Smith, and Kevin has brought a special guest with him today. We have Colleen Mailloux, our town planner. And Colleen, I'm really glad to have you here with us. As you, I am sure, are aware, there's been so much discussion on Stonehenge, and that has certainly brought to light a lot of discussion on planning processes and how things work. And why not go right to the person who's taking care of all of this for us now? So I'm going to start off by...
Thank you for taking care of all of it for
yeah,
us, Colleen.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, Kevin's peripheral. You know, we use him when we need him, but you know, you can handle this. On our last show, Kevin and I got into quite a deep discussion on the whole Stonehenge project, because as you are certainly aware, that's been a big discussion around town. People are, you know, for it and against it, and they have very strong feelings. So my thought was, the more information we can get out there about how the process really works, the better off we all would be. And I know it seems like it should just be common sense if the traffic was the big thing. If there's traffic on the road and we don't like that, and there's going to be more traffic, we're not going to like that, so let's just not do it. But of course, that's not the process. So we started back with when the company actually had the land and got it approved for a building project, and we went from there. From the beginning of the process, is there something you'd like to say about how we start off with these projects? What's like the first thing that happens when they come in?
Sure. And this project is a little bit unique in that there were some variances required when the project initially came in. So they had a few different processes they are working through with the zoning board and with the planning board. But with the planning board process, once an application gets submitted to the town, and this being a large-scale project, an engineering plan was actually submitted to the town for the first time in November of 2015. So at that point, they had their variances in hand, they knew what their project was moving forward, and then we start to look at the design of the project.
Do you know what year they actually started this whole process? Like, when did they first?
They initially received their variances, I believe, in 2014.
Okay.
And so
it would have started even before
so it would have
that,
started
they
before
had-
then. So
yeah.
actually, the Stonehenge project has really had a 20-year history, because prior to the current
Wow.
developers, there were previous developers who had had projects coming in for approval, and so this is something that for 20 years there have been some form
Something
of
going on
a
up
plan
there.
going on that
Okay.
property.
Okay.
So it's been a long time coming.
But this is the
And
one
then-
that comes to fruition.
Which, by the way, Dottie, not to interrupt Colleen,
no,
but
not-
it goes back to what we had talked about on the last show, which is just thinking forward. Because we knew that there had been multiple developers come in and look at this, if we really didn't want anything to be developed there, we should have had the foresight to say, you know what, let's purchase that land and put a conservation easement on it.
Right, and you had mentioned this last time.
Right, and
that we're
hindsight's
gonna be
2020.
more-
Hindsight's
yeah.
2020 on it, but thinking forward and being proactive for the future, you know, looking at different areas in town
Yeah.
to say, where do we want conservation easements?
Yeah,
Where do we
yeah.
want open space so
Right.
there's not further development? And as a side to that, just an example of that is I was reading some of the social media today about, you know, people's comments on the Woodmont groundbreaking, and someone said, well, there goes all the orchards. All the orchards are going to be developed. And I don't typically inject anything, but in this case I did, and I said, no, actually it's the orchards, the rest of the orchards aren't going to be cut down and developed, because the town years ago put conservation easements on the remaining 3 of the 4 orchards. The only one that
Yes.
doesn't have one is Elwood,
Yep.
but the
Yeah.
big ones, Sunnycrest, Max, Merrill Farm up north, all have conservation easements on
Yes.
them. So.
Little-
Anyway, I
little-
digress.
That's okay.
Yep.
It's good to know that people are planning ahead. We like that. Okay.
So as far as a design and planning process, an application was initially submitted, and the Town of Londonderry Planning Department has a lot of technical review that's done behind the scenes. It's all of our files are public. Everything is fully there for anyone who's interested in wondering and wanting to know what's happening. But we do a lot of technical and design review that's not necessarily done at a planning board meeting, but is done in a process with our third-party review engineers, with our Department of Public Works and Engineering, and with planning staff.
Just for the public edification, why do you use the third party?
We use a third-party review engineer because it allows us to have an engineering consultant that is looking out for the best interest of the town. So we have our town engineers who are doing review, but they, just because of staffing time, because of other things that they're also working on, we as a planning department hire a third-party review engineer that's looking for the best interest of the town, and they're reviewing a plan to make sure that the plan that gets submitted meets all of the technical requirements of our regulations as far as stormwater management, utilities, the structure of the pavement, the
All the
setbacks,
minutia.
all the minutia that's
Needs
very
to be
important,
done.
needs to be reviewed, and so we have someone who's reviewing that and making sure that the town's interests are represented. So with this project, it was initially submitted for design review in November of 2015. At that time, they also submit a traffic analysis, which is a binder that's about this thick that we have in the town files. Everything that gets submitted as part of that initial documentation is always on record in the town. We send notices to any abutting property owners, and we post the project plans on the town website. So we're trying to get everything out there as much as we can, and we begin that design review process. So because of the traffic impacts involving state roads, NHDOT is also a very important player in that initial review. So this project went through what we call 3 rounds of design review. So they provided plans and specifications, and we reviewed and said, no, you got to fix this, or what about that?
And how do people find these documents? How do they?
So they're all available in the planning department. So
Okay,
what
so they
we
could come
so
to-
they can come to the planning department anytime. We're there Monday
Just
through
say,
Friday,
can
8:30
you
to
lug
5.
out that traffic study
we
for
can
me,
lug out
and
that
they'll
traffic
sit and
study,
go through it?
and we could, and so we always post the plans on the internet, so that way people can see them on the town's
On our
website.
website,
The items that are more technical in nature, it's really difficult. Most people aren't going to be able to sit and pull up on the website a traffic review and be able to understand the technical detail to it. So that's why we recommend people come in to the planning department. We'll pull out that whole file, and the McGregor file is a large one at this
Okay.
point. But we can sit down then and explain this is what the traffic analysis and walk them through some of the details and
So
help people
would it
to
be
understand.
best for them to call you first and maybe set up an appointment so that you can?
You-
I mean, I
we-
don't want to walk in while you're in a meeting with the boss here and.
It's good for people if people want to schedule some time and know that they're going to be able to find us and sit down and they have a
Okay.
lot of questions. It's good to schedule an appointment. But a lot of the information requests we get, and not necessarily project specific, but a lot of people come into the planning department just trying to find out some information about their property or trying to pull a piece of information, some deed references, some historical plans. And so a lot of that walk-in traffic we accommodate and are always happy to help people finding out information
But they
on
can
there.
also
So-
go on the website.
Yep, they can go on the town website, find plans. They can email us or call us, and we're always
You don't have a chat
available.
box on there?
No, we'll
Not
need to
yet, Dottie.
Work on some
Not
website
yet.
improvements.
Yeah.
Am I your favorite person, Kevin?
Yes, you are, Dottie.
Yeah, right. We'll watch for the chat room. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted too.
I think it's very important, and we as a planning department pride ourselves on being available for customer service to the residents of Londonderry. We're here to make sure that people can understand a process if they have a question or concern, and we really see ourselves as being that conduit of information to try and help people understand. Sometimes we tend to forget that not everyone is involved and immersed up to their ears in site plans and subdivisions, regulations and ordinances. So it's good when people come in and talk to us and say, hold on, what does
What
this
does that
mean?
mean? Yeah.
And we can really explain to people. A lot of times in a public planning board meeting, it can be confusing for someone sitting in the back
And
of the
there's
room,
not
not
enough
quite
time.
understanding the
Yeah.
process. And in those meetings for the planning board are very structured, and they're reviewing applications, and they have a process that's laid out by statute that they need to go through. So we encourage people if they want to come in ahead of a meeting to talk to us. If they have questions for the planning board or want to be on a planning board agenda, we can add items to an agenda if we
Right.
know what people would like to discuss and put those on ahead of time.
Okay.
And I think
Is-
I was going to say, I think that's a key point because the planning board agenda. The planning board isn't a general governing body, that's the town council. So the council has an area for public comment
Right.
at every meeting. Whether there's a public hearing or not, they're gonna have an opportunity for public comment at the beginning of the meeting. The planning board doesn't do that. Most planning boards don't do that. If you look at the Office of Planning for the state, they give guidelines and recommendations for what planning board agendas ought to look like. It doesn't include times of public comment, though if there is a public hearing, obviously the public can
Right.
speak at that
Yeah.
time. That being said, if someone calls the planning department ahead of time and says, hey, I'd like to get on the agenda because I want to discuss a specific thing, you know,
Yeah.
that has to do with planning, could you do that? We'll accommodate them, and we'll
Okay.
make sure they get on the agenda. I think what the planning board tries to avoid is just a free-for-all at every meeting, you know, for anyone to come in and bring up whatever they want to talk about.
And I understand that because you have to get through that agenda. So you
Exactly.
have to have
Yep.
some structure to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not that the planning board doesn't want to hear public input. It's just that we want to be able to structure the meeting and have it on the agenda, and so the planning board can be prepared for whatever it is
Yeah.
going to be talked about.
Yeah, because all we need is to have people say, you can't get anything through the planning board because it takes forever. It would just take
Absolutely.
so long
Yeah.
if you did that, just wide open.
Yep.
Yeah.
A wide open meeting like that, yeah. Now, we're talking about people getting information and all that, and I have to be honest with you. Kevin, you're gonna love me again, but I went on the website. Things have changed, okay? The website there for a while, it was like, boy, you went on there and whatever you wanted, you could find it like no problem.
Yeah.
I really had a problem this time. It's been restructured, reorganized, and I didn't find it improved my ability, because I'm not that great at finding stuff to
Yeah.
begin with. And that I found concerning because I would like people to be able to go on and just go, okay, this is what I want, boom, there it is.
Right.
Because it's frustrating. And
Yeah.
frustration is not a good thing when you're trying to make sure people understand what's going on. Is there a trick, or if there's no trick to getting through the planning department information and finding exactly what you want, if there's no trick to doing that now, is there any plan for maybe reorganizing? I know it's a lot of work,
Yeah, it's,
but
and I wouldn't disagree with you. It can be, the issue is there's a lot of information, and so it's like, okay, where do you, how do you put all this information out there that's in a way that's also easy to find without not putting information on it, if that makes any sense. So
No.
for instance, if you go,
I'm sorry.
if you go on whether it's the planning board page or the planning department page, there's multiple links. There's probably at least a dozen or so links to the Woodmont Commons PUD page, to plans currently under design review, to signed plans. And you want to put all of that on there, but at the same time, because you put all of that on there, there's a lot to go through, and oftentimes there's a number of links to click through until you get what it is that you're looking for. So yes, it needs to be more user-friendly to find that stuff more readily available. Maybe one of the things to look at is what are the most clicked on links, and then highlighting those things on the page itself, the pages we know where most people are going to go to.
Well, one of the things that I found, for example, is I ended up on a page where every ZBA planning board meeting that went on that had anything to do with any project from the planning department was listed. There was no chronological order. There was no separation according to meeting, according to project. It was just there. And I'm like, this is just so cumbersome. And I had put in that I was looking for Stonehenge, and all these things came up. Well, like you said, 20 years worth of stuff pretty much came up. So even chronologically would have been helpful in a situation like that. And that other information isn't that on the ZBA site already? Do we need to put it again, or do we just need to put a link to the ZBA?
What do you mean?
Stonehenge project, and you go to the ZBA site and get it there. I mean, is it listed on both sites?
It would be listed on both sites.
Yeah, so we don't need it on both.
Well,
We need it
depends,
on one, and we need to be
yeah.
able to get there.
And the other thing too is that, and one of the things when you were actually going through it, and we were talking offline about this, is that there's not the entire file, okay, that's in the planning department isn't online, not because we don't want to put it on there, but because the file's just so large, the storage capacity, it doesn't allow for it. So what you'll get when you click on, for instance, the Stonehenge plans on the website is you'll get the the engineering, basically the engineering, the site plan design that they submit.
Yep, right.
All of the ancillary information that goes along with it, traffic studies, for instance, those aren't on there, but they are available in the planning office. And again, it's just
And
a
that's
matter
all
of
it needs to say.
Yeah.
Okay, is that, because of, because of the size of the file, some things are only available through the office, and if people can't get there, I know that you will make arrangements to get them to them one way
Right.
or another. But I'm not going to redesign your whole site right now, but I'm not wonderful at computers, but I'm reasonably adept at them. And I did ask a friend of mine who is very good at computers, okay, I'm not finding what I'm looking for here. Can you see if you can find anything? And they were not able to either. So that gave me the justification that it's not just me. It does need to be looked at. So you guys know that now. I won't harp on you any further. Well, I might bring it up to you again, but you're off the hook. So if people do have any more questions about that and they haven't found it on the website, at least call you and find out, is it on there? Am I just missing it? And you could tell them where to find it.
Yep.
And if it's not on there, you'll make sure they're able to get it in some other way.
Yep, we'll
Correct?
provide it
Okay.
electronically, or people come in. If we don't have it available electronically, they can come in and review our files. And we'll make sure everything is available. All of the records in the planning department are all public records available
public,
for
right.
review at any time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, like I said, our biggest thing is making sure that we want to make sure that you understand what you're looking at too. So in that way, it's nice if we can sit down and go through a file with you and make sure that you understand, instead of just handing over a pile of paper and saying good luck. So
Appreciated,
Yeah.
especially when they're that big.
yeah.
Okay. So now, as we go through the process, where are we right now
So
with Stonehenge? Let's just stick with that one
So
for a
with
minute.
Stonehenge, at this point, they've gone through they went through their several rounds of design review. They've gone to the planning board. The project has now ultimately received a conditional approval. So the project at this point, as part of the conditions of approval, there are still some remaining technical items that need to be addressed. So as far as completing the final design so one of the items, the big issue of concern was the traffic at Stonehenge and Route 28. So
Yes.
our
The failed intersection.
so I don't know if you want. I can get into the discussion on intersection failure and mitigation, but suffice to say that through the year and a half of traffic and engineering reviews with our third-party consultants and with DOT, with our town public safety officials plus engineering and planning staff, have agreed that the proposed mitigation that they're talking about doing, that additional turn lane at
Yeah.
28.
Yeah.
It doesn't fix the intersection. We know it's an intersection failure. It's going to continue to be in failure. But what they're doing by putting in that turn lane is mitigation that's appropriate for the
little
impact
help.
that they're going to have. So, and that's the standard in planning and through a lot of U.S. Supreme Court cases regarding property takings, is that there
Yes.
needs to be a rational nexus and that it needs to be related to their impact. So that mitigation that's being proposed is that turn lane. One of the issues is that they'll be working on now is actually designing and engineering the design of that turn lane. So NHDOT has looked at it and said, yes, this is sufficient for the volume of traffic. We've looked at it, it's sufficient for mitigation, but they need to actually design it.
It
Just
still
because
does not help
it's-
those of us who are at that intersection and want to go left.
It doesn't help. But one of the items that we've also, so there are some checklist things then that the developers need to complete before we actually sign plans and they can start putting shovels in the ground. So they're at the point that their plans have been approved, but they have to meet some of these additional conditions and do some more homework and some legwork before we actually finally sign off on the plans.
Okay.
But as part of the traffic analysis, it was very timely for us at this point on this project, because it was also playing into the time where the Department of Transportation was soliciting projects for its 10-year plan. In order to get a project funded by the state DOT, you need to be
Gotta get on the
demonstrating
plan,
that there's
yeah.
intersection and failure. Here, the traffic studies documenting that and get it on the plan.
And the
So
state's not arguing that. They recognize that that's
state's
in
not
failure
arguing,
as
they
well.
recognize it's in failure. The challenge is funding being what it is. We're competing with a lot of intersections and failure and a lot of road improvement projects throughout
Yeah.
the state.
Yeah.
But we have submitted that to DOT. It's currently in their projects on the horizon, their long-range plan, but it is something they've recognized as wanting to move the funding up and
Okay.
knowing it's a priority for the town to move
And
into the 10-year
Kevin,
plan.
you had mentioned this last time, that there was definitely a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes work going on to get them
Yeah.
to
So
prioritize this
one of the
for us.
things that we are looking at is if there are any other funds out there that may help us expedite getting this done. And to that end, I have a meeting with DOT and Councilor Chris Pappas on the 21st of this month.
Okay.
They're going to come visit us, talk to myself and Janos about.
Make sure they drive down to the end of the street and have to sit there and wait.
Oh, I think they're well aware of the problems at that intersection. But we want to talk about, are there any emergency mitigation funds, highway safety funds that could be used, as I said, to help expedite
Yeah.
this process. And, look, it would be great if, with the fact that the developer is on the hook for having to build that extra turn lane, well, if we could take the money that they were going to use to do that and put that towards a contribution of fixing the intersection
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
between the state and the town as well, that would be great. But it's all dependent on how much money the state has
Right.
For this project. So hopefully it'll be a fruitful conversation on the 21st, and I think they recognize that that intersection is a big problem.
Well, we will look forward to hearing how that meeting goes.
I'm sure you will.
So we will, yes, yeah. Now, when all these things come into place, what are we looking at for a potential actual date that there's going to be some occupied units up there? I mean, I know that's
Yeah.
like throwing a dart at a...
My guess is that because one of the biggest items prior to getting their plan signed and being able to start construction is DOT approving the engineering plans
And I
of
know that
turn
can
lane.
sometimes take a
and
while.
DOT can be a slow process to work through. So optimistically, if we said within 6 months, they may have plans signed, which then means they can begin construction and start that. There's potential that they could be constructing, building over the winter. I wouldn't say that they would have any certificates of occupancy for their first buildings for at least a year and a half out.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so just
Yeah.
because of construction cycles and there is phasing involved in their project, so they're only allowed to build a certain number of buildings each year, and it will
Okay.
be phased in slowly as they go.
Okay.
So the first phase will include 4 buildings, and then they'll continue to build after that.
Now, I've had someone ask me some questions about whether or not there's any impact on wetlands up there.
They are not in, so they have some temporary impact to wetlands themselves that are associated with the utility construction that they're doing. So that
Okay.
doesn't, because it's temporary impact, there is essentially an expedited permit through New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services
Okay.
for the utilities and to get those through that area. Other than that, there are no impacts to wetlands. There's no construction within any wetland buffers. So the town has a conservation
There's no-
overlay district.
There's no parking lot backing
There's
into...
no, so we have in a conservation overlay district that the standard is 50 feet, a 50-foot setback of a buffer from a wetland. Up in that area of Little Cohas Brook, there are some portions of it that it's a 100-foot setback.
Okay.
And they don't have any work, any improvements, anything happening within 100 feet of a wetland.
Okay, so we're twice
so they are outside of any regulated buffers. I know that there are concerns of having any improvements in any proximity to a wetland, but
Sure.
they are outside of what our regulations require
My big
them to
thing
be.
on that one is just make them go back and take out the darn dams. Okay. It's like, I get so tired of seeing those rubber dams sitting there for like years. Are they supposed to decay or something? And he's looking at me strangely.
I'm not sure I know
Yeah,
which rubber
which-
dams you're referring
Oh,
to.
the dams that they put up when they're trying to keep silt from going into water and things like that.
Yeah.
It's like they never go back and take them out.
Yeah, so they.
And that includes the state, too. It's
tho-
everybody.
and that's one of the things that we, as part of when a plan gets approved,
Mm-hmm.
then once construction happens, we also have a third-party engineering firm that does construction oversight. So they do inspections during construction.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to issuing a CO, a certificate of occupancy, when a building is complete and ready to be occupied, those are some of the punch list items that I personally think it's very important to make sure, because we have these erosion control measures, so silt fence
Yeah,
or other
that's
check dams
great,
things
yes,
during construction. But once the site's stabilized, we don't want to see that silt fence hanging out there.
I'm with
so,
you.
so it is one of our checklist items that
Okay.
our engineer, as they're doing the final punch list review, looks to see, okay, the site needs to be stabilized. If it is, if it's safe to remove these erosion control measures, we do.
Out,
We remove and
okay.
take them out.
All right.
So
Okay,
yeah.
that's good to know.
it's unsightly.
Yeah, yeah. So you got to ask the questions. You don't know if
Absolutely.
anybody else is paying attention. So what else goes on within the planning department that people might want to know that they wouldn't know? What do they say on that MSNBC show? Tell me something I don't know. That's Chris Matthews, I think. Yeah, tell me something I don't know.
I think the planning department does a little
It's
bit of
gonna
everything.
give you a very large
yeah.
list of things.
The
I
planning
wasn't going to say anything,
I
Dottie.
know, you were thinking, I could hear you.
the planning department does a little bit of everything, and I think that's what we really enjoy. So aside from the helping, if someone if a resident is applying for a variance because they want some chickens on their property that's under a certain acreage, so we help a resident who is coming in trying to go through an application process, or working with a developer and their engineering representatives on a project like Stonehenge or Woodmont. We see it all, and then
Okay.
we're also just helping people with general questions about planning process, or not sure how to interpret regulations, or they just aren't sure where to go with their question. It has something to do with the town or with property, and they're just not quite sure. We tend to be a catch-all for trying to answer questions and help people through, and with understanding what are our local regulations, how those can apply to your property, what are their state regulations to be aware of if you have concerns with what your neighbor's doing and on their property, then we try to help people understand what you're allowed to do.
You
I
know,
get the, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the questions that actually came up the last time, and maybe you can expound upon it more, Colleen, is Dottie had brought up how she said it looked like newer developments weren't held to the same acre zoning that the town once had.
I said that?
I thought you did.
I don't think so, but that's okay, go ahead.
Was that-
Somebody said it.
Oh, maybe that was a different conversation
Could've
with a different
been.
Dottie.
Could have been.
So,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, yes.
what are the town's regulations behind how much acreage you have to have when you're doing, say, a single-family development?
Well, I wish I could give you the simple, easy question, but we planners make things complicated. Typically, in the town of Londonderry, there's an acre and a half minimum lot size, but it all depends on
Oh,
soil.
it is different. It used to be 2 acres.
It can be down to an acre depending on if you have municipal water and sewer,
Yeah.
if you have septic system, depending on the soils on your property. You could need to have an oversized lot because if you have a lot of wetland soils, then those soils don't count in our calculation. So I can't give you a really easy answer, but there's a lot of information that goes into to factoring and determining what's a standard lot size that's allowed in the town of Londonderry.
Okay.
We do have provisions in our ordinance for open space subdivisions that allow a smaller lot size, with knowing that the developer is putting aside dedicated open space as part of their
Yes.
development.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things at play there.
So it's not a black and white.
It's not a black and white on
that's-
what's your lot size.
And I'm glad you talked about that, because I think there is a misnomer out there that every lot size has to be 2 acres.
Yep,
you
that's
know.
what they used to say.
And that, I mean, that may
I'm
have
so much
been
older than you, Kevin.
years ago, yeah. But
It
it's,
was years ago.
yeah. The ordinances have developed over time.
Evolved a bit.
Evolved
Yeah,
a bit, yeah.
Yeah, and you're throwing in all these little technical differences too, so that
And
makes
again,
it
that's
more
not-
of a decision versus
Yeah.
a just, okay,
Well,
you
and I was
got
going to
it.
say, and that's not unique to Londonderry
No,
either.
no,
I
no, I
know,
wouldn't
because
think it
someone
was,
asked me
yeah.
the question recently about they were driving around in Wyndham, and they said, well, Wyndham must have 2 acre zoning. So I texted one of the selectmen in Wyndham and said, what's your zoning for? And the answer I got back was, that they have soil-based
Soil-based
zoning.
lot sizing.
Yeah,
Yes.
soil-based lot sizing.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, that explained a lot. To
Yeah.
us non
Now I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
understand.
right?
Yeah.
Colleen, I'm getting the sense here, and this makes me feel good because my philosophy when I was in the cable department was always like, let's get to yes. Okay, I don't want to sit down and
Exactly.
argue with you. I don't want to try to keep you from doing something. Let's see if we can't get to yes. And this is the first time I've met you, but I'm definitely getting the sense that that's sort of where you are too. Come on in, let's talk. Let's see what we can make work.
Exactly.
Versus come in and I'm going to figure out all the ways I can stop you.
Exactly, and I think that's very important, and it applies to a residential property owner who's trying to put
little
a shed
thing,
on their
yeah.
property, to someone who's trying to do a larger development. This is what our regulation says.
Yeah.
Now, how
Yeah.
can we modify your project or what you're trying to do to make sure that you can do some
can get there,
simile
yeah.
of what you want to do,
Yeah.
but you're going to do it in a way that meets the town of Londonderry's requirements.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think
working with people.
we don't really have time now because I know that you have another meeting to get to, so I'm going to let you go. But at some point, I think we should get down and talk about the little things because I know there are a lot of people that think, well, it's my property, I can do that, and when they really do need some oversight. Not going to stop them necessarily, but they need to have some oversight. So I am going to let you go because I don't want to make you late for your next meeting. And Colleen, I really thank you for coming in. I think you've helped a lot, and I hope that everybody understands now that there is a place where they can go and they can get all that information, even if the website overwhelms you like it did me. You can still go to Colleen and she'll tell you where the info is. So I hope that that helps with some better understanding of what's going on with the planning department. Things are not just willy-nilly, there is a plan in the planning department. So Kevin, thank you for bringing Colleen.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was
And
great. I'm going to
thank
keep
you for
bringing
having me.
people in all the time, Donna. I
Because
just get
you didn't have to
sit
talk,
here
you
and-
just, yeah, you're off the hook today.
Yeah.
I'll get you next time. Thank you very much for
Thank you for
coming. I
having me.
really do appreciate it. And it was so nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
And it
Always
was
a
so
pleasure,
nice to
Dottie.
meet you again.
Yes.
And thank you for watching. I hope that if you have any questions, you'll either send them in to us, call, and leave a message at the Access Center, or you can call the town office, go to the town website, and get some information there as well. All of the contact information is at the end of the show. And I forgot to tell you, today is June 9th, 2017, and the day that we're recording. So please tune in next time. Thank you.